Hello everyone, my name is Borax and I have been on a mission to play and rate every single champion in the support role. Today we'll be looking at one of my most played champions of all time, Vi, and the reasons why she could work as a support include a passive which periodically gives Vi a 13% max health shield after hitting an ability which can help her scrap a bit. She has her Q where Vi charges up her fist while slowing herself. When recast, she dashes in her target direction, dealing damage and knocking back enemies she runs into. The longer you charge up this ability, the further you can go, and upon landing, you will deal more damage. Her W is a passive, which grants her basic attacks an on-hit effect, then when she hits someone 3 times, she will deal bonus damage based on her target's maximum health, and apply a 20% armor reduction debuff, which is handy to enhance your ADC's damage. Vi also gains bonus attack speed if she procced this ability. Then she has her E, which is an auto attack reset that also grants her bonus range and damage while giving her a stack of her W. Finally, she has her ultimate, which is an unstoppable point and click single target CC tool that will dash Vi to her target and knock them up for 0.75 seconds, while also knocking aside all people she passes through for 0.25 seconds and stunning them for 0.75 seconds. Vi is traditionally a jungler, but she has a fair amount of CC and percent health damage. So, could she be viable as a support? Well, let's find out together as I rate Vi, the Piltover Enforcer, on her ability to be played in the support role.
Here I come to save the day. Or wreck it.
In the early game, I like to rate a support's ability to invade, lane, and roam. Invading always comes with a little risk, but if you can catch people off guard while you're sitting in a bush and are able to charge a max Q, then Vi is pretty decent and you could start off the game with a little double kill. But traditionally, invading as Vi is really awkward as you have a very obvious channel with your Q that people will be ready to avoid as you come in. And while you could try and flash Q, it could be a one-way mission as the amount of CC and damage you do is rather minimal and the enemy team might just turn you into first blood. For invading, I will give Vi a B-. She can definitely catch people who are unawares, but the range isn't the longest on her Q, and because it's so telegraphed, people will be very prepared for it. Now let's talk about laning. We like to judge a champion based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all inning. Vi isn't a ranged champion, so her poke isn't the best, but that being said, you do have a decent trade pattern with a channeled Q into auto and E auto animation cancel, which will give you your passive shield and proc your W bonus percent health damage. The problem with this is you can only hit one person, and the other person can respond to your trade by either CCing you or hitting you, so it can be a bit tricky. If you are able to hit them with everything, you usually want to try to continue the play and force an all-in, as you will have procced your W, giving you bonus attack speed, and it's easier to go forward than back. For poking, I will give Vi a D+. As someone told me in my Discord, you can poke with your E while you are proccing your support item on the minions, but if you aren't building damage, it doesn't do too much, and you might accidentally kill the backline minions away from your ADC. Peeling as Vi is a bit awkward, as your only CC tool forces you to go in, so if you are low, it can be dangerous. But at the same time, if you utilize your passive well, you can be quite a nuisance in close fights. Your Q, however, is not the easiest ability to land, and if you miss it and are pre-level 6, you will have no other CC to help out your ADC, and you of course have no shields or heals to peel against damage, so your best bet against 2v2 all-ins will be either to flash away or fight back. For peeling, I will give Vi a C rating. It's definitely doable if you can land a nice Q, but it's telegraphed and cancelable by CC, which exists by the truckload in the bot lane. When you do have your ultimate, it can help you peel a bit because you could go forward to CC one person with your Q, then look to ulti the jungler who might try to focus your ADC as an escape path. But if they just focus you down, then your ulti won't help you too much. Vi is a very one-dimensional character. If you can hit your Q, she's solid, but if you miss it, you are screwed. All inning is a lot of fun though, because the damage she can dish out if she can hit people can be rather powerful, with her W doing percent max health damage, while also granting her attack speed, making it easier to proc future Ws. She also has her passive, which makes her a bit tankier and can have its cooldown lowered when you proc your W. I will say, pre-level 6 Vi is not the best champion as a lot of her power comes from her ulti, so unless the enemies are trolling, you might find it a bit tricky to force early fights, as when you press Q, they will clearly know what you are trying to accomplish. Usually, you want to play the lane rather safely until you can get level 6, because once you have that, your all-in potential skyrockets, as a point-and-click CC ability that can CC both the ADC and support while also ignoring CC if you time it properly is truly amazing. You want to make sure to combo your ulti either after your Q CC runs out if you hit that first, or using your Q after you use your ulti, as it will be much easier to land. For all inning, I will give Vi an A+ in lane. Pre-level 6 it can be a bit tricky, but post 6 it is quite spicy, especially if you get a gank. If the enemies are at all pushed up, it will be to their demise. I will say, if they are near their tower and have a dash or flash up, it can be deadly to ulti someone, as they could bring you to their own tower and finish you off, so you do have to be aware of this, because while it is admittedly hilarious, it is also very troll. Now that we've talked about Vi's laning prowess, let's rate the matchups that she might have to face. The hardest matchups are by far Morgana and Thresh, as they can really mess Vi up. Morgana Black Shield completely negates Vi's ult, and because it's so telegraphed, even the worst Morganas would be able to render you useless. Because your Q is also super obvious, Thresh is a great counter, as he can just get ready to flay you away if you're trying to go in, or if you're trying to escape with Q, he can flay you backwards, also cancelling it. What's even worse is that he can lantern the target you are trying to ulti, bringing you fully into the enemy team, which is no good. Champions with point-and-click CC, or that have tools to cancel your Q easily, are not fun matchups for Vi, as they can once again CC you right as you try to make a play. The heavy engaged champions are also miserable for Vi, as she can struggle to peel for her ADC. Finally, the anti-dive champions are once again no fun to play against, as that's exactly what Vi wants to do in most cases. Lanes that will be very miserable to play against will be all the heavy poke champions, but there is the caveat that if you can ever get on top of them, you do have a good chance of killing them. But the lanes will be quite tricky, so hopefully your jungler helps out early, and once you get level 6 and you aren't too behind, you can actually try and make a play on these champions. Champions with slower CC are not as effective against Vi, as you usually want to be sitting in a bush charging up your Q to go in on people, and even if they have an amazing reaction speed, you should be good to go. Rakan and Pyke can be alrightish matchups for Vi, as they usually utilize their mobility to get out, but Vi has lockdown from her ulti. Two champions Vi should be able to do well into include Sona and Yuumi, who have 0 hard CC early on, and if you can land fully charged Qs onto them, it should lead to them blowing a flash or letting you get a kill. But you definitely need to be playing with a quite aggressive ADC with early kill pressure to make this work. Finally, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even, as I'm waiting to see people pick these characters in my games. Now let's talk about bot laners that you want to pair Vi with, and the best options are those who have the ability to get in range when you are going in. A champion like Kai'Sa can be quite solid, as she has her ulti to follow up on people you ulti, which makes anyone who is by themselves a potential target. In lane, the best pairing I believe is Yasuo. While Yasuo is not a traditional ADC, he can fulfill a lot of the things you want from the role, and his ability to dash through menus to follow up your Q engages or use his ult off of your point-and-click ultimate makes him a decent pick here. The best traditional ADCs to pair with Vi in lane are Kalista, Samira, and Tristana, who can jump their way to your aid when you're looking to go in and have a decent amount of burst. Kalista also has the amazing synergy of her ultimate to pull you out of tricky situations if your Q or ulti play was not a good one. However, in the hypothetical case your ADC is a useless bonobo, then you definitely might want to consider roaming from time to time, so let's talk about that. Because Vi is traditionally a jungler, that should mean she is decent at roaming, right? Well, yes and no. If you've ever played Vi jungle, or if you've seen it in a competitive match, then you know how much you really want to have your ultimate to make plays around the map, as it's a lot more reliable than your QCC. That being said, Vi is still quite good at roaming, as her engage range is lengthy, especially if you combine her Q with a flash. Her Q also being able to go over walls so that you can dodge potential wards is nothing to sneeze at. For roaming, I will give Vi support a S-. Besides solid engage, you do a fair amount of damage with your W. Once you have your ultimate, which I know I've been talking about non-stop, then your roaming potential just skyrockets, but frequently roam timings happen a bit before you do hit level 6. Let's give Vi a rating for her ability to support in the early game, which will slot at a B-. The bot lane is actually pretty tricky for Vi, as she can struggle if she doesn't have the element of surprise, as CC counters her Q so well, and because it is Vi, the chances that you will have lane priority in order to establish bot lane bush control is quite low. But I wonder, maybe things get better when it comes to the
Punch first. Ask questions while punching.
In the late game, responsibilities of a support I like to rate include their ability to get picks into teamfight. Vi is one of the best champions at catching out isolated targets, even if they are super far away. You can use your Q flash to gap close, and then press your ultimate to get that CC to pin them down for your team to catch up. This is a ridiculous gap close, so it is very handy if your team also has a gap close, or else, after the enemy is CC'd, they will just walk away from Vi. Vi deserves a S+ for getting picks. Point and click CC is king for this category, as the chances of you messing it up are very low, meaning anyone that is out of position will be punishable. You are also decently tanky with your passive, which should prevent you from getting one shot, unless of course the enemy is super fed, but then the game might be doomed anyways. Now let's talk about team fighting, where support's responsibilities include engaging, peeling, and sometimes dealing damage. The best engaged champions in the game are those with lots of impactful AoE CC, which Vi kind of has on her ultimate, knocking people to the side and stunning them temporarily, but it's definitely not the best either. Once again, your Q being a channel also harms our engage, as people know exactly what you are planning to do in the play, but despite these weaknesses, Vi's engage isn't that bad, especially if the rest of your team has some follow-up to go in with you. For engaging, I will give Vi an A rating. Being able to consistently lock down carries is truly a powerful tool, but with League of Legends having multiple carries that you want to be able to CC at once, prevents her from being at the higher tiers. Peeling as Vi really depends on one thing. Do you have ult? If yes, your peeling is really strong, as you can ulti that person who is trying to kill your whole team. If you don't have ulti, your peel is lackluster, as it will just be reliant on you hitting your Q, which can be difficult against slippery targets. For peeling, I will give Vi a B-. If you are using your ulti here, you'll be quite sad, as it is such an important ability for her. Her QCC is passable into bruisers, but against assassins or poke, you can't do too much and they will most likely melt your team. Vi's damage is alright, as she has okay-ish base damages, and her W damage is always nice, but considering that the only clips I have for dealing damage are Q kill steals, makes me think she isn't too crazy. I'll stick with a B- here, because her W shreds armor, so you are helping your team do damage, but it's also not very realistic that you will be frequently autoing people, as you'll be wanting to play around your cooldowns and avoiding damage, rather than doing 20 damage per auto. Before we rate Vi's overall ability to support, let's take a look at the runes and items that I would recommend. My favorite keystone was Aftershock, as it lets you go in with your ulti or Q without getting completely blown up. At the same time, it can be a bit hard to proc, as you only have your Q early on and it is very missable. Secondarily, I really like Inspiration, so you can take Stopwatch, which just gives you a get out of jail free card that can be very impactful in fights, and if you think about it, the rune is worth 750 gold. I also think you could go for a minion Dematerializer for better roam timings or biscuit delivery in really hard lanes. But there's also Cosmic Insight to lower your item and summoner cooldowns, or you can even take Approach Velocity, which will help you stick on people after you land your Q, which is very useful in lane as your autos are quite powerful. The next keystone that I like is Glacial Augment to help you stick on people after landing your Q or slowing entire teams as you go in with your ultimate. It is a very useful rune and has more playmaking potential, but it is definitely less forgiving than Aftershock, as you'll be far squishier without the bonus resistances. The final keystone I will recommend is Electrocute if you are playing the kill lane, as she can proc it very easily with her Q auto E reset, and it also grants you access to Ultimate Hunter, which is really nice to have. Now let's talk about items. For a gold income item, Steel Shoulder Guards is the best bet to get the minion execute, and while your E does indeed do a tiny bit of magic damage, she is way more AD based. Because Vi is so great at roaming, you usually want to rush tier 2 boots, and there are few better options than Ionian Boots of Lucidity. CDR and lower cost, what's not to love? Although, like I always say, if the enemy team is full magic or physical damage, please do buy the appropriate boots. After boots, I usually ended up working towards my mythic, and while I'm usually a hater of this build path involving Cinderhulk, I do think Turbo Chemtank is a great mythic for Vi support, as it helps you run towards people to either Q or ulti them, and when you arrive, the AoE slow is a nice further addition to your combo. At the same time, Evan Shroud is a solid option for Vi, she does have a fair amount of CC, so when this item is strong in the meta, she can utilize it quite well. In a pinch, Locket will of course also work out to help you peel for your team, but I do think you really want to lean into the identity of being a great engager. Other items that would work well on Vi, and could even be rushed in some cases, include Deadman's Plate if you really want to lean into the roaming strategy, Anathema's Chains to help you survive against one person and lower their tenacity, Thornmail if the enemy team has a ton of healing, or Frozen Heart if the enemy is full armor, as Vi will be able to apply the aura effect quite easily as she scraps in the fights. Even though I never went to lethality, it's definitely doable if you want to have some fun with Electrocute. Also, Umbral Glaive is a broken item with just how much vision denial you can get from it. Now that we've talked about the runes and items, let's give Vi an overall rating for her ability to support, which will slot at a S- rating. I'll be honest, at first I was going to grade her a bit lower, but she's always somewhat useful even when you are behind because her point and click ultimate knockup is such an impactful ability. If the rest of her kit was better, she'd easily be S+, but with her Q being unreliable against dashes, and that being her only other form of CC while her ulti is down, doesn't make her quite the support power pick. She also doesn't feel as tanky as you would want, meaning that any mistakes she makes could lead to a quick gray screen. Would I recommend you play Vi support? Absolutely. Vi is a very fun champion in my opinion, and while the laning phase might be miserable if you get a bad matchup, if you can make it through the early levels, you will feel quite impactful with that ultimate of yours. She also does have the potential to snowball games if the enemy bot lane misplays, as she does deal decent early game damage, and she can use that lead to impact all other lanes with her roams. At the same time, you could end up just getting a game where every time you go in, it just leads to your instant death, as Vi is such a committal champion, and the lack of resources from the support role can really be felt. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would leave it a like, that would be amazing, and if you would consider subscribing, that would make my day. We also have a Discord, link in the description, so feel free to check that one out. Again, thanks for watching. I want to wish you good luck and have fun if you're playing Vi support yourself. You might need it.